Joining me now is Democratic Congresswoman from New Mexico, Melanie Stansbury. She is a member of the Natural Resources and Oversight and Government Reform Committees. Welcome back, Congresswoman. Always good to have you here. So we know some rural hospitals have already closed, but most of the law's impacts won't be felt until after the midterms. How will Democrats get out the message to voters about the harmful implications of this legislation if they aren't yet acutely felt until after votes are cast?
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand that this bill will be devastating for the states and the organizations that are going to have to pick up the slack from the trillions of dollars that it's going to cost taxpayers and especially people in our vulnerable communities. So, first of all, this bill makes the rich richer, 4% richer, and makes the poor 4% poor. And that will be redistributed across healthcare, food assistance, housing, educational assistance. And already states are having to convene special sessions to figure out how they're going to cover those costs. Those will be immediate impacts to state programs. Hospitals are trying to figure out how they're going to balance their books. Clinics are already announcing that they're going to shut down in advance of the start of those Medicaid cuts. Educational institutions like community colleges are already talking about cutting back on enrollment because of the impacts to Pell Grants, and our state food programs are already talking about the impacts that it's going to have on seniors and veterans and low-income families and children, and especially our public schools. So the effects are going to happen sooner than people realize, even though the start date is next year in many cases, because cynically and nefariously, the Republicans intentionally set some of the most damaging aspects of this bill after the election.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Congressman Robert Garcia, of course, the newly elected ranking Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, will hold a power, if you will, to investigate the Trump administration if the Democrats flip the House next year. So take a listen to what he said to me yesterday about who would be top of his list.
Well, look, I think first has to be Donald Trump and his family. They're the biggest grifters, con people in the history of modern American politics. And the fact they're selling the White House, essentially, and access to the White House for God knows how much money, which we don't know because they're unwilling to talk about it, I think has to be at the top of the agenda. And then, of course, you have someone like Stephen Miller, who is essentially co-president of the United States right now, and the harm he's causing. I think there's plenty of questions to be asked.
Do you agree with that? And should Elon Musk also be investigated for his work at Doge?
I mean, there's a lot of people to investigate for a lot of malfeasance going on in this administration, but I think the American people are hungry to have their faith in government restored, especially after just the absolute devastation we've seen over the last 6 months. And that's everything. That's an anti-corruption campaign. That means getting corruption out of the executive branch, investigating the activities of Trump with his crypto corruption scheme and this jet and his selling access to the White House. It includes getting big money out of politics on the Hill and ending stock trading on Capitol Hill. It's restoring faith in the judiciary and making sure there's actual ethical reforms in place for the Supreme Court. So I think that restoring faith in democracy and our institutions and investigating bad behavior is going to be core of what we have to do when we come back into power.
Politico is reporting since Musk's departure from the government, Doge is a mere shell of its former self, with at least 8 of its top staffers gone. As a member of the Government Reform Committee, what can you tell us about activity with Doge and its efforts to currently root out government waste and fraud?
Yeah, I think Doge is in its flop era as far as it was originally conceived by Elon Musk. But it's very clear that inside of the White House and the administration, the architects behind Project 2025, which there are over 70 of in key positions inside the federal government, are trying to rebrand it and take control of the very powerful things that Doge has done. It's hacked our data, it's stopped funding, it's engaged in all kinds of federal firing and freezes. So even though the Doge effort, as was imagined by Elon Musk, is totally flopping and the people are leaving who were excited about it and it's failed in its mission for efficiency, it is now being hijacked by folks with a very dark political agenda to basically use the tools of governance to achieve their own end. And I mean, look at what they did at State Department on Friday. You know, they fired 1,300 people and escorted them out of the building. That is, you know, they're trying to reshape reshape the federal government and society using this Project 2025 agenda, now coupled with the tools of DOGE. But we're going to continue to fight it.
Yeah, those State Department employees that were fired, I mean, so much experience went walking out that door. It is extraordinary. Let me get to something that we don't want to talk about because it's difficult, but you represent the town of Ruidoso, I believe is how you say it. That's been battered by the flash floods this week. 3 people were killed, 2 of them children, more than 200 homes damaged. Is the community getting the resources from the federal government that it needs? And I'm curious your response to the multiple reports that FEMA has made major missteps handling the deadly Texas floods.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, you know, the community of Ruidoso and the communities hit by the floods in central Texas are just it's absolutely devastating. Yeah. And I think it's important to acknowledge that not only have we lost a number of lives, but there's still over 120 people missing in Texas, and we have to find them. But yeah, I mean, the situation in Ruidoso is very different than the situation in central Texas. Even though we're seeing these extreme weather events, it's monsoon season. Ruidoso was ravaged by a massive fire last year, and there had been flooding going on for weeks. We had already begun the process of requesting a federal disaster declaration weeks ago, and they had been running tabletop exercises for emergency rescue and response. So the town of Ruidoso was prepared for this catastrophic flood, even though it was very devastating. And I think, you know, local leadership matters, especially when you have alignment of mayors, counties, the congressional delegation, our governor, all working in concert. And we were able to get emergency money pretty rapidly. The president did sign part of our disaster declaration, and Secretary of DHS did release some funds, but we still have millions of dollars that are held up under FEMA and other programs, NRCS, that are vital to rebuilding. And this is just the beginning for our community. It's going to take years and years to recover from this disaster.